So we're back with another freaky episode. I'm starting to. I've been watching myself while I'm editing myself, and I'm thinking this must be really freaky, but it's okay. I'm fine with this. I usually am minding my own business when this happens. I swear, I mind my own business, and all of a sudden whoever wants to come in pops in, and usually it's on YouTube. So I'm blaming YouTube for all of this. I was minding my own business this Easter, and I was feeling a little bit under the weather and feeling kind of. So I watch a lot of stuff and not just these type of videos. And I had. It usually happens either they show up somewhere while I'm walking, or I'll see an image of something. But usually, like I said, it's on YouTube. And this was Dolores Cannon. And now this video is not about Dolores, as you can tell by the title and my two colored eyes. But she came in and she said, you have to have a look at this. She said, and I do believe in everything that she's done in past lives. And I believe in all of that. It's all information that I sort of already knew, because it was already being brought to a lot by the channels that I watch. And I said, okay, I'll have a look. So I listened to her talking about The Convoluted Universe, which is a series of books she's made. I said, okay, I'm going to read it. So I downloaded my first book and I read it in about 3 days. I was really, absorbing the knowledge a lot. And then and David has been sort of in the field, in my field in the last 2 years. He's been sort of hanging around, but never really like sending a message. He always he gives me a nudge, and I'll listen to a Bowie video or I'll listen to his music, which I like. But it was never really like, hey, I have a message for you. But I kind of realized that if they're hanging, eventually they're going to have a message for me. So, but I wasn't expecting this. And it ties back to this Christmas or before the holidays. And in my city, they organized a viewing of Ziggy Stardust, the movie. There's a movie documentary, live concert capture of David Bowie, and I went to see it, and I really felt he was there, and he really wanted to see me. He wanted me to see him, or vice versa. Hard to tell, really, because we're all one. But yeah, he wanted me to observe, and there was something really important for me to see there, and I didn't really realize what he was preparing me for. And in these books by Dolores Cannon, there's mentions of Atlantis. And, that these people had these amazing, extraordinary powers. And because they found a way to connect to the universal energy, and they developed all these technologies. But they all went really, really wrong at some point, because they got full of themselves. Basically, the human ego is a real thing, and it's not. He's coming in now. Because we had a conversation. Sorry, I do have to talk with them before, but he said more would be given. He's saying the human ego is fine when it's groveling, and doesn't have a lot of power. The moment it gets power, it's the monster, it's the beast. And he says, in my life, I didn't really understand Ziggy, because it was such a weird time in my life, he says. And I want to talk about Ziggy, because whenever you see an interview of me talking about Ziggy, I'm always very uncomfortable. And has nothing to do with the cross-dressing, because that wasn't really an issue for me. I was very comfortable in my body and in the gender that I had chosen to come into, whatever that, however you want to see that, I can confirm I was very comfortable. It wasn't about that, because Ziggy sort of happened, he says. And when you come into a life you're really carrying a lot of the stuff that you didn't work out in the previous life. And so he says, Ziggy is sort of not an alien, because I thought he was an alien because I was obsessed with space and the future and all of that. But Ziggy ended up being someone that I was at the time of Atlantis. And he's like, it's a shock, right? Revelation. He makes a lot of faces. So he likes me because I make a lot of faces too. He's like, you're the perfect person for this, Eva. He says you should do the British accent too. I'm like, I'm not ready yet to do that on camera. But he says, that was my mystery. I didn't get where this Ziggy guy came from. I thought, because it was really weird how it happened. I met all these people that I had to meet karmically. Angie, who is truly far out. He's saying she's far out. If you think I'm far out, she's truly far out. And he's saying, I didn't realize what was happening when I knew I wanted to perform and to bring music. I knew that was my lesson to bring, and a lesson to learn, and how to be a communicator of energy, of music. And I didn't know that back then, we had mastered energy, the energy of everything, basically. We were masters of everything, even DNA. We could, and these eyes that happened to me, and I didn't realize it either, because it was really an accident. My brother hit me. But even that was something from the previous incarnation. So he says, I want to call it the second coming of Ziggy. I wasn't called Ziggy back then, he says, but that being was the Ziggy that I created was very connected to my Atlantean priest being. And we were sort of the rock stars in Atlantis. We were, when you were really powerful and you were a high priest, you were the rock star because people wanted to be like you. They wanted to have your energy. They wanted to have everything that you had. And we would do shows, just like what I did on stage. And so the building of Ziggy was me finding people, because I didn't have the talent to create Ziggy. But I knew I had this pull inside of me to go and get that person. And Angie was instrumental because she's the one who got me to put on the clothes. And I don't want to call them women's clothes because I don't believe in that anymore. And I don't believe it should be seen that way. They were just clothes. They were costumes. But what people don't get is they were this connection to that being that was a priest. And I don't want to mention his name. I'm not getting a name. He's just saying it doesn't matter who that was. But I was recreating him through the help of other people who got in the makeup, who got in, all the other pieces that I couldn't do. And also, he says, Mike Ronson, he says the guitar god. I mean, Ziggy wanted to play guitar like that. And that was like my magical wand, my magical power. And that represented that. And all these things came together in such a freaky way. And it just blew up so fast. I couldn't understand what was happening. And I was being possessed by that being that I had been. And I was recreating all of these situations, and I was becoming an asshole once more. He's like, yeah, I was becoming an asshole, magical asshole once more. And he says it was so scary because I was out of control and power hungry and just incredibly out of control. And, sex and getting people's energy and creating that energy, it was such a powerful experience for me because I had never encountered that before that time. And when it happened, it just made a connection to to that point in time where I was that being, and I was recreating the loop. But the thing is, the drugs and just being out of control made the fact that I couldn't control that power any more now than I could then. And in fact, I could control it less because I didn't have the spiritual connection that I had to connect the power. Sorry, we got carried away. So he says that was enough. That was enough of that element of it. I was really overwhelmed. But he wants to go back to Atlantis. Back then, we achieved something incredible, and people connected together with their minds. He says it was like a Wi-Fi between the minds on that island that created this energy of creation. And then the crystals and then other technologies were amplifying our psychic energy because we connected. And some of us had come in with more of it. And we were so close to God. He says this close, but within that space, there still can be ego that comes in. Ego, I don't want to call it evil because it's a very human thing to call that piece evil. He says, but the ego has a way of making you blind. And that is the challenge of being a human, being an individual, having that ego, and knowing that it's not, that it is a challenge to deal with it while you're trying to connect to the one, and you're trying to be oneness. We were like children, we had these powers. Well, not children. He's saying teenagers. We had these powers. I mean, I could change the way that I looked. I mean, you could change your genes. You could activate things in your genes. And this is what I did back when I was in Atlantis. I gave myself these 2 colored eyes, and I would change my hair color. And he said, and another important thing, that as a lot of people that are now on Earth were in Atlantis and were part of that situation, is that we knew that as a human being, you had to connect your male and female energies. And when I went on stage, that's what I did. I connected the male and the female. And we would do that also in Atlantis. The ones who were really very powerful, they came in with that male and female energy already connected inside of them. They didn't need to go and get it from other people to connect to it. And we would do it by changing our bodies, by becoming androgynous with these machines. We could change our DNA and make ourselves more androgynous, and then that would connect more to the energy of the universe, which is an energy of equilibrium, of connection. And that's what I was doing on stage. And that's why people reacted to it so much, because it was tapping into their own experience of Atlantis and I wasn't the only one. I just want to make that clear. There were many others who were priests like me who had these amazing power. We were 40 people. We were the elite. We were somewhere between scientists and masters of the spiritual interconnection. And I really want to stress this. We were much more advanced than any of you are today, and some of you are not that bad. But there was really this close to God. He says we were this close to God. I mean, that much, but it doesn't take much. I mean, the ego gets in, and if you don't keep it in check, it talks into your ear. And that's what was happening with Ziggy. I was using people, and it went out of control. But he says it was an important lesson, because I overcame in this life, And a lot of people were disappointed that Ziggy had to be put away. And he's saying, in the silver pyramid, with the tinfoil around him. He's like tinfoil. But if you go to heaven, if you pass on, if you croak, he's there, not me, Ziggy, that being, that, me, him, that, it's not important. We're all one. But if you're feeling misty about Ziggy, you can just come to heaven, and he does a show every day, and he's surrounded by this sort of kind of material, and sparks fly everywhere, and he plays the guitar like Mike Ronson did. And he's a god in a sense. In that way, he will energize you. He will give you that energy of creation, which he represented. But, I was just a young man with a good sex drive. And I kind of took advantage of that. I wasn't ready, but when I got older, I was ready. It's just, I didn't have that look anymore, and I couldn't connect with that anymore. But he's saying it's really important, because even though you might not have been that high priest in Atlantis, you were part of the psychic energy, the connection. We were one mind, yet we were individuals. It's really hard to explain, because you have to have experienced it to know what it is. But you will be entering a new phase like that. And your egos are already pretty big, and it doesn't take much for you to destroy something. And you have to really, really be careful, because the power will be here soon, and you have to be careful. He's saying we have to be careful not to go back down the path of thinking, because we can control things and we have power over them, that we are the masters and that we are God, because you're not God yet. You don't have the full capacity of love that God does have. But it is there, and you have to work on it, and it takes time, but it's not going to happen overnight. But you have to always remind yourself, ego is in check. And he says, I hope this answers the mystery of Ziggy, and why I had so much difficulty with him, because he was such an intense force, an intense karmic force from my own past, that I couldn't deal with. And there's a connection with all of us, not all of us, but most of us, that think of the future, and that believe in magic, and that believe in this sort of power, that we were there because we saw it. We saw what we could do, what could be done. It's just, we have to be more connected to this earth, and not elevate ourselves like that above other people. We have to stay grounded, because we went to this island and we isolated ourselves, because we didn't want the primitive people, and we didn't want these people with us. And we were like in a vase, and thinking we're all super powerful and super intelligent and better than everyone else, but we're not. We're just beings, and we have to stay humble and stay within the power and within what the power could do. But it was just so amazing to change your body, to splice things together, to create these energies, and to heal people. I mean, it was amazing. It was just fantastic, but it overwhelmed all of us. So I came back. I did the hair and makeup off camera. I did a little Instagram story, because I have to feed my regular, normal programming. I don't know if one day both will meet, because you know, working in with other people's faces is very superficial. So this is courtesy of a photographer from the 70s called Guy Bourdin, and he's been hanging around me since I did The Virgin. He was telling me he had two inspirations. The first one was The Virgin. He didn't want to put women in the pictures. He wanted to have a representation of women that was non-denominational. Like it was like a stylized version of a woman, and so he had that coming in, the Virgin Mary, and he also had Atlantis coming in. So it was like a combination of both. And when I was starting to get more information about Atlantis, he said, "This is also Atlantean. This is what they would wear, or something sort of blue, cool-toned, black around their eyes." And that's why the Egyptians ended up wearing the black, because this is actually Atlantean. And David Bowie wants to say, whenever you see something about the future in human creation, in human projection, when you see a story and they're trying to visually recreate the future, they can't help it. They always go back to Atlantis, which was the most evolved, futuristic aspect that we've ever had as human beings, and they can't help. So that's why it always ends up looking the same way in some ways. Like, it's not because of the inspirations that, because in the 80s they did a lot of future films. And it's just, that Grecian draping and the big hair, because we could do that. And he's saying blue eyes and red hair are a creation of Atlantis. So they were the first ones to find the genes and express them. And that's why he had the red hair, because red hair and blue eyes, they come from Atlantis. They found these genes, and they were playing with plants, and they were playing with their bodies, and they were playing with their looks, all that, what do you call it, plastic surgery and changing your face and all of that with makeup and plastic. They were the first ones to do it, and we're just threading back to what they did and how they did. We're just doing it our own way, but we can't help it. It's a karma. So all of those who were in Atlantis and they try to go back, they go back to that place. And it's really hard to imagine other worlds. And whenever you see other worlds in movies or things like that, they were channeled from people who got the information. We can't visualize that because it doesn't belong to our line of evolution. It was given to us, some of it, but everything that we claimed before belongs to us. Things that were given that we hadn't fully assimilated, we have to start over again. And that's what he's saying. He's also saying, remember we were driven not by money, because today people are driven by money. We didn't have that, but we were driven by power. And some of us, the high priest, he's saying we were cheap. We didn't let other people know all of our secrets because we wanted to keep the power. And he's saying it's really important to share the power and to empower other people when you can share the power and show other people how it's done if you know how it's done. Don't keep all the secrets. I don't know if you're going to hear it because of the microphone, but he's saying don't give all the secrets. Don't share don't give them to people who don't get it. But when people show themselves to be worthy, then give it to them, because when they're worthy and they know how to hold the power and they know how to be humble, and that was his biggest lesson, to be humble. And people often thought, what happened to him, because they saw Ziggy and then they saw after Ziggy, and that's why everyone always asks these questions, like why. And it was really simple. He had to learn the lesson, and we're all going to have to learn the lesson of humility, because this earth is not unlimited, and there are limits to what can be done in terms of our own power and our own ego. But we have to connect to that higher mind to be able to get all the powers back again, and to use them for good, to heal this planet, and not to create, you know, to focus solely on ourselves, and make ourselves be these creatures of beauty, and obsessed by our own narcissism, and creating, half breeds and genetic manipulation, that goes beyond the basic needs of the body, which is to just be healthy, and to feel love. And music is really important. He's got so many things to say. He doesn't want this to be long so people don't get bored. But he says music is really important, and if you want to go listen to my music, Ziggy is really fun. You can keep Ziggy in your mind. Some of the lyrics, they're not very uplifting. They won't get you to the higher dimensions, but my music was an extension of me being a priest in Atlantis, and I knew the power of sound. I couldn't do it all on my own, but I had amazing people with me to guide me on the journey, and I was always humbled when so much people wanted to help me, and to give me their piece of talent to contribute to the work that I was doing. And that was really humbling. And that's why no one's going to have all the power all at once. They're really looking at us from the other side, and making sure that they don't give too much too fast. And we have to prove that we're worthy from the other side, to the other side. So that's it. Guy Bourdin is saying, he's saying, that's what he's saying. He says he loved that magic of the colors, and the beauty. And David Bowie says, I wasn't this good looking, but not bad either. And sorry about the red hair, but yeah, that's what they told me. Red hair and red was considered a very high vibration by the Atlanteans, and both of them love the red and the white. But especially Bourdin. Guy Bourdin, il aimait beaucoup le rouge. Et il aimerait dire à tout le monde en France, bonjour.